Alright, so who knows what free and open source software is? Hands.
Who's heard of it but doesn't know
Heard
what
of
it
it,
is?
but yeah. Alright, so there are 3 of the top 100 sites in the world that are free and open source software.
Wow.
Only 3. Can anyone guess what they are? That's
Reddit?
1. That's 2. Anyone else? Which one? I don't think so. Reddit, Wikipedia.
Linux.
We're not
No.
top 100 yet. No. They host open source code, but they're proprietary. It's WordPress.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, WordPress hosts about 25% of the websites on the internet. So actually, they're one of the most powerful platforms for liberation that's out there right now. And they've done it in a for-profit model. It's actually, we have some similarities to their business model. And now, how many of the top 100 are encrypted? None. Well, they use some of them, we use HTTPS and the encryption layer of the protocol, but in terms of messaging, none of it's encrypted. So no major, and of those top 3, WordPress, Reddit, and Wikipedia, none are actually a social network. So Minds is a free, open source, and encrypted social network, and it rewards you with digital currency for using it. And you can exchange that digital currency for increased virality on your content. So you're basically earning views on whatever you want. And eventually we're going to have payout mechanisms so that people can actually make money on the platform. So it's that, but it's also a hosted product so that you could actually have your own social network. So this is Minds, but I have a friend who runs a hyper-transparent kind of innovative hedge fund, and they're using the Minds platform for their investors. So you can actually, this is where the WordPress thing comes into play. So it's like a WordPress for social networks. What we think is that eventually every website in the world is going to be a social network. Because why wouldn't it? Why would you just have a static website when you could have your own Facebook, essentially? So, I mean, in terms of Facebook, and Google and all of them, they're incredible. They have designed the software really well. I mean, I think that I use Google every day, I use Facebook every day. I don't want to. I'm trying to extract them from my life. But it's a slow process of sort of being able to, and that's what has been really interesting with Minds, has been seeing, okay, what can I migrate? What am I able to do on Minds that I no longer need to use these other platforms? But, like, for instance, on Facebook, so what Facebook has been doing with their algorithm for the last few years is manipulating it so that now you are only reaching about 2.5% of your fans organically. For some reason this isn't, okay, here we go. So, like a few years ago, it was pretty crazy. You could actually, we had pages like this one where, you know, you post an image and you get, well, this is what it is now, 2,000 likes, whatever it is, a gorilla looking at a smartphone, and it would get, 3 years ago, this would get 5,000 likes and 5,000 shares. Now it's down to 70 and 20. So they're intentionally doing that because they want you to pay. So they're now intentionally limiting our ability to communicate with each other. So brand pages on Facebook are basically not nearly as valuable as they used to be. So on Minds, we'll never restrict your reach, which is a really important thing. I mean, what is the point of a social network? It's to reach the people that have subscribed to you. So when they say, okay, no, we're not going to allow you to reach the people who have subscribed to you. Actually, a lot of brands, even big media companies, they paid millions of dollars to get likes, and then so that they could reach those people. And then 2 years later, Facebook's like, actually, we're not going to let you reach those people anymore. So it's pretty corrupt and sketchy behavior, to be honest. I mean, they've done all sorts of experiments that are weird. Like, did you guys hear about the psychology experiment where they manipulated millions of people's news feeds, so that they basically proved that they could change your emotions through the news feeds. They would put positive or negative content through the feed, and they measured people's responses, and they saw that yes, we can change people's behavior through this. And then they eventually apologized later for it because they realized it was really weird.
Did they actually apologize? I don't really remember.
Yeah, well, not.
It was like a half
It was
apology.
half,
Yeah. It was like, we apologize that you didn't like what we did.
Yeah.
yeah.
We're sorry that you feel
But we're
that
actually
way.
definitely still doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's all about, so what we're trying to do is create a top social network that is open source, so we're transparent, and it's encrypted. So in our messages, we actually have no access to the content of our users' messages. So on Facebook, they're scanning every word, every key that you type in, whether or not you even press enter. So if you type a status and then delete it, they got it. And it's the same way on Microsoft, their new operating system, Windows 10. They have keyloggers. So everything you type is going and getting analyzed by business intelligence algorithms. So this is not okay. I mean, they're selling it to huge advertising firms, and it's a whole racket. Yeah, it's absurd. And they're not talking about it, and they're going to have to talk about it because we're going to confront them about it, and eventually we're just going to embarrass them. Because, so here you have to put an extra layer of a password just to access your messages. And then it's pretty similar. I mean, the thing is that, so we had a really successful launch in June for the mobile app. I wish I could show you the mobile app, but it's okay. Just get it next time. And so basically, everything you do on the app, you're earning points. So when you vote, I just earned another point here. And we don't have the boost function on the desktop web app. We will soon. But basically, on the bottom, on each post, you'll see a little button that says boost, and you can push that and exchange your points for views. So if you exchange 100 points, you get 100 views on that photo. So if you don't really have much of a network to get your media seen, then we're trying to give people an opportunity to actually be heard. Because it's super hard to build up a following on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everything without having someone like push you out to further more people. So.
Sorry, just a little question. Can it be targeted, like in Facebook, so to the right audience? I mean, 100 likes or 100 views is nice, but 100 views of potential.
Yeah, there's two ways to boost. So you can either boost to the full network, where we will just aggregate it to everybody until it's fulfilled, or you can do a peer-to-peer boost, and I could target a boost at your channel and offer you 1,000 points to share my image. And if you accept that, then you get those 1,000 points, and then you actually can't delete that content afterwards. So there's been an exchange of value. And we're going to actually make it so that you can exchange cash for posts too. So, for instance, on this page, what's happening on Facebook now, there's sort of this underground economy that exists. So we've got people paying us, this is one of our pages that we started a few years ago. We've got people paying us to post on this page, like 10 bucks a post, and they're just PayPaling us, and then we're making them editor on the page. So a couple years ago, we saw that this is how Facebook was working, and we were like, we should automate that. So what we did is we made it, because if you pay somebody through PayPal and Facebook, you're sort of trusting them to make you editor, so that you can then share on that page. So what we did is you get a little notification when someone offers you, and you say accept or reject, and then if you accept it, you get the money or the points, the digital currency. So if you have an Instagram channel with 5 million fans, you want to monetize that. I mean, like, we're sort of, traditionally in the open source world, it's been sort of polarized towards that you can't really make money on it. People say it's just always has to be nonprofit, and we have a nonprofit arm, but we're sort of, with the emergence of the sharing economy, we think it's really important that everybody starts being able to make money more easily. Because what does everyone want? They want to be able to make money from doing what they want to do from home. No one wants a job that they hate. So pretty much, we have all these monetization plans to help users make money. So we have the peer-to-peer boost where I can target you and give you money to accept my share. We have a referral program with the hosting option where if you get someone to set up a site with us, you get half of that money forever. So it's like $10 a month for your own domain. Then you'll get $5 a month just forever, as long as that person's a customer. Or if it's $100 a month for the higher level, you'll get $50 a month. What else?
I'd love to know, Bill, could you like back up and tell us, like, I think it's still not obvious why you'd want to get off Facebook. And so what I'd love for you to do is like tell us about your personal revelation and like why you've dedicated yourself to Minds. Like, where were you? How did it come about that you decided this was like the path to take?
Yeah. The easiest analogy that I have come to is between open source and organic food. So organic food is exploding for obvious reasons because people want to know what is in the food. They want it labeled. It's exactly the same with apps. So we have app markets. It's going to emerge that there are going to be new sections of the App Store that are organic or open source. You can see what it's doing to you. You can see how it's interacting with your data. You can analyze it, and you know that it's good for your system. So my process has been understanding that the technology that we use is affecting us, our health, and it's, sharing our data all through all of these companies and who knows what's going on with surveillance and all the Snowden revelations and all this. So it's not that you ever have to necessarily stop using them. I mean, I think that I would prefer if there was the top social network was one that actually supported the people and was powered by the people. But in the meantime, it's kind of like you use the tools that are out there to propel the movement further. So, I mean, Minds wouldn't exist in a sense without Facebook doing what they're doing. If Facebook or Google would just open source all their code, I would stop. We'd be done. I'd be happy.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, no. Never happen.
So keep going.
But it's funny that we need them to exist, in a sense. And they've also designed products very well, and they're amazing. I mean, it is fun to consume media on Google and Facebook.
Well, just like it's good, like it's yummy to eat a Twinkie sometimes. Not good for you. It's not good for the system. Who knows what it's doing?
Right. So Facebook is totally the fast food of social networking. So I'll just take you through a little bit of what else is here. So we have Bitcoin wallets, and we're gonna make it so that the wallet can exchange any kind of currency you want. It can exchange our points, Bitcoin, dollars, whatever currency. A lot of the traffic that we've driven in the last few years has been just our community of bloggers creating random stuff like.
Is this, what is this that we're looking at? Is this like a homepage?
This is like a featured section of some of the blogs on the site. So this is just recent stuff. I mean, you know the kind of stuff that you want to click on, like some crazy innovation, like a few African kids made a generator you can piss in and it like powers your house or something. So that stuff is interesting. And so we drive traffic to the site and try to grow it by creating this media that is interesting.
But I mean, even, I can just tell a lot by the nature of these stories where,
yeah,
where your sensibilities
it's all
lie.
about sustainability, transparency, encryption. I mean, ultimately, we want the whole network to be powered by 100% renewable energy. Data centers consume so much energy, it's absolutely outrageous. So, that should all be solar. And so it's a slow process getting there. Like right now, our servers are actually in Amazon, which is in a sense in the heart of the beast. But we have to, because if we built our own data center in my apartment, it would just be absurd, and it would be so expensive, and it probably wouldn't be able to handle all the traffic. So once we scale to the point where we can afford it and it makes sense, we'll totally build our own data center. It'll be totally encrypted, and the NSA won't have whatever backdoors they probably have into Amazon. But you just do what you can. So like we encrypt all of our messages, we encrypt your password, we encrypt your email. We have all these things, so even essentially if the NSA got into our data, they wouldn't be able to read it. They would have to brute force attack your password, so have a good password. Definitely recommend, because unfortunately right now we do keep the private encryption keys on the server. We're going to make it so that they come off, but don't use passwords is a bad word. It's passphrase. Don't use passwords. You have to do a passphrase and just mix it up and like create patterns in your head so that like one thing I'll do is there's here's a password. There's a light on the ceiling, and then I'll use some number 11 and then maybe the first word of the website that I'm on. So I know that it's going to be different for each one. You don't want to be putting the same password on every site, because then if that site gets hacked, then your password's out there, and then that's causing issues. So it's creating these schemas in your head to make it easier. It's really not that hard.
Could you just like walk through what an average, like how an average user would use this on like a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I post stuff on similarly to how I do on Facebook.
I was just gonna say, it's similar. Like
It's pretty much the same. I mean, you've got your feed and you post stuff and you can message with people and you've got your points, and here I can go through and these are a bunch of featured channels that I might want to subscribe to.
So do you like still add friends, or do you just follow people?
You follow, and if you mutually subscribe, you can message. So more like Twitter than Facebook for friending. And then you can upload like bulk videos. We have a whole video environment so that we can control videos. So in the advertising world, like, have you heard of Ello?
yes.
So they're an alternative social network, but they're proprietary, so they don't share their code. They're not transparent. They have somewhat good intentions, and I kind of wanted to like them, but they don't share their code. So if you don't share your code, I'm sorry, you're just not ethical, in my opinion.
Why is it? Like that's beyond my non-programmer. Like, what does sharing code say about a company and not sharing code say about a company?
Right. So if you don't share your code, then there's no way for the user or for the user community to know for sure if that app is infecting their system, like taking their data, has backdoors, doing whatever. So it's essentially the company not trusting the users,
Yeah.
and they're forcing other companies to reinvent the code that they've made. Like I was saying about Google and Facebook. If they released it, like we have put 4 years into building this, and Facebook and Google already built it. So it's like slow. Speaking of innovation, that slows innovation.
Yeah.
Because if they had put the code out there for us to build on top of, then the whole world would be further in terms of the evolution of the software. Because we wouldn't have had to catch up to them.
How many people do you have? I mean, how many people have...
We've got like 100 million people who have come to the site. We've got coming on about 500,000 users, and they're very active.
Yeah.
So, but there's such a long way to go. But I sort of understand why we're not at the full critical mass yet because the app still needs to catch up. Like, it's still very beta and experimental. So you'll get on and it works and it does most of the stuff, but there are bugs places, and we're trying to get. We have a full new version of the web app coming out, which we're going to release, and then release all the code, so that, because we've released half the code so far, we're going to release it all later this year, because you don't really release code that sucks. No one, not sucks, it's just that if it's not documented properly and ready for programmers around the world to really embrace it and understand it and do it properly, then it just doesn't make sense.
That's just like the unspoken rules. It's kind of like a courtesy.
Yeah. So with Elo, I mean, like, I just don't understand why. You know that they know, and you know that Facebook and Google know what's going on, but they're just not talking about it. So
Know what's going on in terms of what?
in terms of the transparency and the encryption.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of this unspoken thing that they don't want to confront because they think that there's short-term, well, there is short-term profit in not letting it go.
Yeah, so what's homepage and what's newsfeed and what's the difference? Like, what's going on?
Well, we're going to take the homepage thing out. This is just our actual homepage.
Okay.
So that doesn't need to be there. These are the people that I'm subscribed to. So, you know, voting is super important. So ultimately it's going to be that the evolution of the site is based on the votes of the users. So we're actually going to be stepping away, and once we release all the code, the top projects that are created are going to be based on what people want, not necessarily what we decide. But yeah, you've got your feed, you can vote, we call
So vote
it,
like a like? That's what
Yeah.
you're saying?
yeah,
And
and the
that's a-
trend,
It does it down, which is nice.
yeah, and you can
Vote it down.
remind it, we kind of, you know,
What's that mean? It's just a repost?
yeah.
So what if you leave it up to the people and it starts going in a direction you absolutely can't stand?
Well, we want that to happen. It's kind of like what happens with Wikipedia. So there's a main branch of Wikipedia, but then, for instance, Spain made their own Wikipedia because they didn't like the policies of the English Wikipedia. So there'll be multiple. It's a good thing for there to be multiple major branches. So that's what happens with open source code. Like it's like a tree, and GitHub is an amazing site for evolving software. So you have the main branch, and then if someone wants the code, they make a branch off, and then they'll do a little change, and they request a merge back into the master branch. And we decide if we want that to come back in, or they decide if they just want to make their own tree over here. So, let's see.
How do you make money?
We make money on, so you can also buy points to boost your content, similar to promoted posts on other networks. So what I want to say about Elo, their whole thing is anti-advertising,
Yeah.
as if ads are inherently bad. So I disagree with that. I think that advertising is a neutral phenomena, and sometimes it can be super annoying, and you should be able to turn off ads so that if you don't want to see them. But for instance, on YouTube, one of the ways that independent artists make money, this may be the top way that independent artists make money, is through monetizing their channels on YouTube. So it's actually really important. And the negative thing about the ad landscape is that the ads are tracking people. So they have cookies in them that are following you around and taking your data. And so like AdSense, Taboola, all these huge ad networks, they make their money by spying on you and targeting you. So we're actually creating an ad network with the Boost network. So see this post? It says boosted here. I'm actually not subscribed to this person. This is just something that's getting fed to me. But this isn't spying on me. This is just something that has been fed to me. And so it is an ad. But ads are sort of changing. It's becoming like you don't necessarily know something's an ad. You know, it's like a piece of content that you might actually want to click on. So I think the advertising world is actually getting more interesting. And you should always have the control to turn it off, but if you want to make money and you want to see ads, like you should get paid for seeing those ads. Why not? Why wouldn't you want to be rewarded for your time on your social networks? I mean, we sit on these networks all day long and give them all of our energy. Like, people should be getting paid. That's where it will inevitably go. So if you look at the other big sharing economy companies like Airbnb and Uber, what they're doing is giving people tools to make money. So like, I have a friend who made like 30K last year on Airbnb just renting his place out on the weekend. That's like crazy shit. So between referring friends to the network and getting paid for it, and getting paid for sharing stuff on your network, we want people to be independent. I mean, what has been so valuable for me with this whole project has been not having to get up and going to do something I hate every day. I mean, so we, unfortunately, you know, we're not perfectly pure yet. So the way that we've been making money and surviving and paying for our servers is actually using the beast ad networks that we hate. So like, this is a Google ad. And this is Taboola. So we want these out, but we need them to make money now. And so it's kind of the same thing, like, I have this page, and how do I drive traffic to mines? I post links on here so that people come to mines and we make money. So it's this gradual process of converting, because Facebook killed our reach, so we created a model. I mean, we've got like probably 10,000 active users a day, so we are actually making money of people paying us to boost content on our site. Like, they'll buy 1,000 points for $5 and they'll get 1,000 views. And we are starting to become independent, but we're not fully able to do that yet. I mean, but if you look at every major media brand, I mean, they're all using Taboola and AdSense. AdSense is on pretty much every New York Times, all the major media companies. That's where their revenue comes from. That's how they survive. So what we're eventually going to do is create an embed code like this for a Minds Boost object, and people will be able to embed it in their site just like AdSense, but it won't be spying on people. It won't have those cookies that are malicious. So it's pretty much about replicating the good stuff that exists, but doing it in a transparent, encrypted, ethical way.
Awesome. What other questions do you guys have?
How big is your team?
Super small, like 5 of us. Maybe 3 to 5.
What are the positions?
It's me, Mark, who's our CTO. I basically design everything. I do a tiny bit of, I look at the code, and I'm good at researching like platforms to use, and I understand what makes sense to use, but I'm not doing all the coding. I'm doing more design and strategy and networking, and Mark is brilliant. He's 21.
Oh my gosh.
He's super, super smart. And then we've got a couple people helping writing all the blogs, and then my dad advises. He's been doing stuff in software for like 30 years. That's it. And then, I mean, we've got programmers, other contractors all around the world, like probably between 5 and 10 people that have contributed like various plugins and stuff to the site. Yeah, and then I can show you a sneak preview of what we have going for the new upgrade. This is very skeleton, but so this is like way faster. This is built in Angular 2, which is it's actually one of Google's cool projects because it's open source. So Android is actually open source. Google is not all horrible. They do some cool open source stuff. Android and Angular is another thing. So like, just to get a feel, it's just so much faster. Like everything moves 1,000 times faster, and we're really excited about how this is gonna be received. We also have encrypted video chat coming out on the app, so that if you mutually subscribe with someone, you can have encrypted communications, because Hangouts and Skype are spying on you and storing everything that you say, and it's just weird. I mean, why do they even want that? It's like, I don't want people's stuff that they do. We wanted to take ourselves out of that equation, so that if they came and asked us, we just can't give it to them.
Along those lines, as you get more users on the site, you have more people kind of in this vein and the kind of organic vein of technology. Do you see, like, do you have hopes for the effect that might have on Google or on a Facebook in terms of how they start to do things, if that becomes, do you have a view around that? Or
Yeah, I imagine that the more popular open source and encryption becomes, the more likely they'll be forced to convert.
Yeah.
So there'll probably come a point, like so there's a handful of other open source social networks that exist, like Diaspora is one. They sort of slowed down to a halt. They don't have much development energy. We're sort of the furthest along, I think, in the social networking space for open source. But yeah, I think maybe we're about in the top 10, 20,000 in the world right now, which is not bad. There are hundreds of millions of websites. But once we start getting towards that higher number, they're going to start looking at us, and once it actually becomes competitive, they may be forced to switch. But until that decision is right in front of their face, they probably won't do it.
So I think the biggest problem of social networks is distraction and the amount of people that are on the website. And the Facebook page is really smart to get people onto your website. But what if, 500,000 people actively do that? That's a lot. How did you get there? What is your approach strategy going forward?
So when we launched, actually Anonymous got interested in us. And I don't know if you know who they are. They're a decentralized hacktivist group. V for Vendetta, Guy Fawkes mask. People who expose expose child pornographers or whatever. And they do some illegal activity. It's not actually an organized group. So people try to speak for Anonymous, but there is no leader. It's leaderless. So they took a liking to us, and a few of their subgroups endorsed us, and that went pretty viral, and we got a ton of media coverage. I could show you some. So that really caused the first major surge.
There you go. That's pretty good.
This is like really recent.
That's a great piece.
Yeah.
That was in June.
And it got translated into dozens of languages, and so this story went really far. And then we also had stuff more along the lines of getting around the Facebook reach issue.
For businesses.
For businesses.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because there were two main angles. Struggling with Facebook organic reach, try this new open source social
Oh, that's wonderful.
networking app. Yeah, so it's not all that sketchy anonymous thing. Some
Yeah.
people might not like that. They might feel weird,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know if I want to be on a social network with weird anonymous.
Hackers.
Yeah. So, but we still will take it. I mean, sure, if they're into internet freedom, I mean, it's gonna bring energy to the site, then fine. So, but it's funny because, when I've got 10,
I just want to make sure that's not me.
is this your phone?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
I was like, no, it's coming from up there.
I mean, if I compare my post on Minds to Facebook, I got 23 upvotes on this. If I go to my Facebook, honestly, it's worse. And I have 10,000 followers, and I can't, my stuff's not public. I don't care if it is, I would change that. But like, I'll do a post on Facebook and I've got all these followers and like 2 people like it. I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's like a total waste of my
Nobody's
time.
seeing it. I know.
So even with way fewer users, people are actually finding it easier to gain a following on Minds already, and we already have so few users. Like, what's the one channel? Anonymity. This is sort of an anonymous channel that really took a liking to it up front, and you know they've got 5,000 subscribers, and you know they get 70 upvotes on a post, which, you know, Facebook has 1 billion users. We have 500,000, but the numbers are oddly comparable for your ability to reach your audience. It just goes to show, I mean, if Facebook opened up their algorithm, it would just be insane. We were making, the amount of money we were making from driving traffic from this page to Minds was crazy with the ad networks that we had. But they basically destroyed an entire industry when they changed their algorithm. Because independent media sites were making a lot of money driving traffic from Facebook. And then Facebook suddenly turns that switch and thousands of businesses were killed. So, and they, you know, do they care?
No.
But what a weird power to have. I mean, that's tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people's jobs eliminated overnight when they switched.
So you mentioned 3 things that makes, for example, Minds is a new social network attractive. You said you're transparent with the users. You let them know what's going on. You're open source so people can use your code to do different things, like, for example, the blog that you showed. And then you talked about reach and reaching people and the switch that Facebook had. And you've seen lots of social networks trying to emerge again, like Bebo, and then you talked about Elo, and I have no idea what's happening with MySpace. But as a team that's creating a new social networks, are there any other learnings you saw from people that try to rise and fail, or re-emerge, recreate, rebrand themselves?
Yeah, every single one. I mean, so Diaspora, we learned probably the most from them because they got a bunch of press when they said they were going to be the open source Facebook like 4 years ago. And then actually one of their founders committed suicide, which was really horrible, and they just didn't get energy. But the thing is, so they're decentralized. It's this idea that anyone can create their own Facebook. That's what they were going for. But when you went to their site, the average person is like, I don't know what a server is. I don't know how to host my own website. What? I just want to log in and like talk to people. So it was too complicated. It was too decentralized. Decentralization is the key to having internet freedom, because if you want to be in full control of all of your data, but the problem is that's complicated. So what we're doing is we have a centralized site, but people can make their own nodes if they want to, and then ultimately when people can either host their social network with us or they can host it on their own servers, and then all of those social networks will federate and talk to each other, so you can do everything from your social network and it can communicate with all of the other ones, and so all of the users can opt in to be part of the whole cluster of networks, or they can choose to be on their own. So ultimately, I don't think there's going to be a singular entity that is like the next Facebook. It will be a decentralized network of networks that will maybe have some sort of unified branding, but it's not actually going to be a single centralized site.
If you have any more questions for Bill specifically about Minds, ask it now, and then we can, we'll take a break, and then we'll have like a group discussion, kind of about social networking generally, and Bill is welcome to stay for that if you'd like. So, yeah, a couple more.
Okay, I was wondering about this very, I mean, how Minds work for brands or companies or personal.
Right. So, you know, start an account the same way you would start an account on any other social network, but the key difference is that just by using it and tapping on stuff on the app, voting on stuff, and Actually, on the app, one thing I didn't mention, but I really want to.
If you want, you can commandeer though. There's AirPlay.
I tried.
Oh.
So,
We could maybe can it work on an iPad? The app?
yeah, we would have to download it. It's okay. You'll probably generally be able to see. So, one thing that's happened with new apps is this idea of geolocation and with dating apps and finding people near you.
Yeah.
I think that that's super valuable. So what we did in a sort of non-gender filter way, because I actually wanted the gender filter, but other people didn't want the gender filter. So you can, when you sign the app, you can add your city. It doesn't track you. You can change the city. So there's a big problem with a lot of apps that are actually following you around
Yeah,
everywhere and they have all the data on you. But we just have a thing so you can put in the city and it finds other people in that city. So I could change this to London right now if I wanted. But so this guy, Dellinger, he's in New York. And so I'm going to swipe right on him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's you? Yeah! It worked.
Nice.
So I just...
Users.
So the difference is... You.
They are
Dellinger, we're gonna
really early adopters.
sync up. So the difference between this and a lot of the other swiping apps is that you're not just swiping. I actually just subscribed to him. So if we mutually subscribe, we can chat and go, do whatever we're gonna do. I don't know. We're gonna have some encrypted chats. But so he'll actually get my posts now. So you're actually, it's not the Tinder thing where you never see that person again after you swipe them. You actually subscribe to them and you can follow them, and if they swipe you too, then you can talk.
Wow.
I mean, because originally Minds was a conference, a live conference and event company. This was like 5 years ago. And so we would do, but then it just wasn't scaling, so we were like, okay, we have to go to the internet. But the whole human face-to-face thing is super important to us, and that's why we wanted this geo filter in it, so that people can actually get together in real life and
That's wonderful.
hang out.
That's very cool.
Because sitting on there, people have said it's like sort of, spending too much time getting points. Like there are users now who will just sit here like all day, just going like this. Just getting points, because you get a point for every swipe you do. And then so I just got 10 points, and I could use those points to boost my post more, so people are like, oh, I want more views, so I'm just going to sit here and swipe. So it does kind of have that addictive, like, oh, I'm spending a lot of time on my phone thing, which is a little bit problematic, but at the end of the day, we're like, okay, would you rather be rewarded or not? Like, we want to reward people, so we're not going to take it away. But we want to encourage real-life meeting.
So could something that you post become popular without spending points, just because it's good content? Like if people...
Yeah, it could if people subscribe to you in the same way that it does on other social networks.
Okay,
Like
so that's just extra.
that's just extra, yeah.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of people come talk to us about like these alternative streams to like very mainstream things like time banking and Bitcoin and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of struggling to understand how once you collect all the people that really understand the underlying issue, how do you kind of reach that next level of people, especially so many people now, even knowing what Facebook is doing with their data, are just kind of like surrendering to that fact and saying that they don't have any control over it and aren't looking to put any effort into regaining that control.
Right. Yeah, no, a lot of people simply don't care.
Yeah.
And people know generally now, and they still don't care. So we consider the open source and encryption stuff sort of foundational to our philosophy. But the whole points thing and increasing your virality and reach, I think that's actually the most popular thing on the app right now. And you don't have to care about privacy to be interested in going viral.
Yeah.
Everybody cares about that. Everybody wants exposure, big brands, people like doing their food, people doing selfies, that they want people to see them. And so if there's an app that can help them be seen more, and they just get rewarded for using it, I think that actually does have some potential for mass adoption.
But I guess my counter to that would be, I think a lot of people use Facebook to only so they aren't looking for that virality.
True. The most common use case so far for us is actually people finding new people that they don't know. And people actually feel more open to express themselves on Minds than Facebook because it's this new crowd. And so they're connecting with new people. I think that it could become the case where just families and groups of friends join as well, but that'll probably be later. It would take much more mass adoption for that to take place because your friends and family would have to be on the app in order for you to want to join. That's probably the hardest thing that we're going to have to surmount.
Yeah, I think that I would just make a comment as a user, as a mainstream user. It is like going to a new high school or something like that, where you do have a new crowd, you get to reinvent yourself, but that's really intimidating. I found also and also I became very aware of how conditioned I was to Facebook. Like I have become almost mechanical about the kinds of posts I do. And it's like, oh, this will be about the environment, this will be about my daughter, this will be about, and it's all pretty safe. It's all kind of things people already know about me, etc. I got on Minds and I was like, wow, I could say anything. Like, I'm making new friends here. And it was intimidating, actually.
Right.
But exciting.
Yeah.
Flip side.
I think that it's cool to be able to have different personas. I mean, Facebook doesn't even allow you to have an anonymous account. We don't even ask for a real email, so you don't even have to give us a real email, and you definitely don't need your real name. So there are some issues with that because trolling and people, but at the end of the day, I think you're right. To anonymity is much more important than people can block you if you're trolling. And yeah, having that vent on the side to say whatever you want is super important. But then ultimately we want to do stuff so that you can actually post to all of your current social networks at the same time from Minds, so that you don't, so you can use it and still be communicating with those other networks.
You can do that with Facebook now, can't you?
To some. The issue is that Facebook, Twitter, they all have restricted APIs. So for instance, Instagram, you can't post to Instagram from anywhere else. But you can post from Facebook to Twitter. There's all these weird, every site is different for what they allow. And that's the problem with proprietary software too. Because if they were open, then everybody would just be able to post everywhere from one place. It would be so much easier, and you wouldn't have to post 1,000 times just to
get the word out.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, let's take one more question and then
So
we'll take a break.
when you're saying you can post from Minds to multiple social networks at the same time, but you still have to go to each and every single social network, see people's comments and their engagement with you.
Yeah, I mean, we have sort of a project in the background, sort of like a Hootsuite kind of thing, so you can post everywhere and you can see some of the comments, but at the end of the day, that's not something that we can conquer because their APIs are restricted. If they opened up their APIs, then you could have everything from Facebook in Minds. I mean, ultimately, Facebook would probably take our API and bring us into them if we ever got seriously competitive with them. But yeah, we would allow that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank